Today we're talking about the masculine woman, and I decided to do this video because I had did a video, I think it was last week, no, the week before last, on why women, like we want these, like these high value men, different things like that, but we just basic, like we want the best in life, but we just do the basic, the bare minimum. And so listen, y'all, that video had got like 13K views, and 97% were men that commented. And one of the comments that I saw repetitively or repeatedly was the masculinity in women. And I was like, man, we hear about it all the time and things like that, but I wanted to kind of chime in to talk about it, because there are times where we do need to be masculine, especially when you're in business, or when you are, I guess just like in business, or just being a person in leadership, maybe at your job, or maybe you're a single mom, So unfortunately, there are times in our life where we have to be in this masculine a role, or if we're in bad relationships where the man doesn't understand his role, or the woman. I have seen relationships just recently where the woman doesn't understand her role, and I wanted to kind of tap into that as well. And so just because we know the reasons why we struggle with masculinity, being masculine, and especially when it comes to relationships, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the particular relationship that we hear most people complain about, and that's of course in a relationship with a man. Like, a man doesn't want to be in a relationship with a woman. He wants a woman to be soft. But there have been many of times where the woman is put into a position where she cannot be soft, because she's more so in the wrong role, and she's leading, you know what I mean? And so I'm basing that on biblical, okay? So I'm going to start off with the fact that a lot of times we struggle with being in our masculinity because we've seen it as a child. We've seen, and I know, ladies, y'all, please, I know y'all not gonna want to hear this, but we've seen our mothers manipulate, right? We've seen things happen in our lives that may not necessarily been the best example for us. So because of that, and because of the fact that we have had, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm at the park and it's just beautiful out here in Miami. It's hot though. I got it on 64 and I'm still kind of a little hot, but it's just beautiful. So if you see me keep looking up, because I'm like, cars keep pulling over or whatnot, but I just wanted to be at the park. Look at I don't know if y'all can see the back part. Y'all see it? Isn't that pretty? So anyway, a lot of times we have had not such the best example of things. And just like how I talk about hair, and the fact that a lot of times we've taught our children at a very young age, especially our girls, not to like their hair. And we add, and how do we teach them? By the example that we set. Number one, they see what we're doing to our hair, right? Number two is we either throw a chemical in their hair, or we put a lot of extensions in their hair at a very young age. I'm talking about as young as 3. I've even seen it at 2 years old. And so because of that, we've learned over the years, it's like a vicious cycle where we're doing it because that's what we was taught. And it's the same thing that goes in when it comes to how we watched our mothers, or that woman figure that was in our life, whether it was your grandmother or whatnot, how we are supposed to behave in relationships. That's where we learn it from. So that's the first thing we want to kind of point out. So I'm not pointing it out to make the excuses. I'm pointing it out because those are facts that have happened to us. So let's fast forward a little bit. Now we're in junior high school, and I can only talk about Miami because I am one of those women that really struggle with that, because we call it strong will. Oh, she's strong-willed. You know what I mean? Of strong personality. But it's really in the context of that, or the angry black woman. But I'm not really addressing this just to the black woman. I'm definitely addressing it across the board because I have been in workplaces where we have seen the angry other race of women, but it's not necessarily talked about as much as it is when it comes to my sisters, because of the simple fact that we are stereotyped as that. You know, we can't be assertive. Assertive is considered strong-willed. We can't have an opinion a lot of times in certain arenas because it's considered masculine or strong-willed. So I think that when we, like, by the time we get into junior high and high school, our minds have already kind of been shaped. Different things have happened in our life, whether it was some form of trauma that happened in our lives, or we just watched what we watched. So by the time we get to junior high, high school, like I remember the girls that used to fight. I mean, I was just telling a good friend of mine how, I mean, the girls be beating the boys down. I'm like, dang, you know, I didn't like to fight, but if I had to, I can get with it. But I did not like to fight because growing up in Miami, it is a very vain city. Miami's vain. So you don't want to be, you know, by this time, they start, you know, taking out tools to affect, you know, to when they're fighting. So I definitely didn't like that. All the bottles, glass bottles and all, So I'm saying all of this to say is that we have a plethora of reasons why we are masculine. But what we don't have as women is we don't have the excuses to say we have to continue that way. I think the first thing is, and I always talk about this because you hear it a lot from men, you hear it a lot from your growing up. Your parents may have told you this, or you may have said this to someone you were in a relationship with, is that I wish that we would be accountable. So the first step is to holding yourself accountable and saying, hey, these are the reasons why I know I landed in this situation or this position. However, it doesn't mean I have to stay there. It doesn't mean that, you know how we say, child, well, this is how I am. This is just how I am. You have to accept it. No. People, they don't have to accept it. They don't have to accept your attitude and your combative mindset. You want to combat with everybody. No one has to accept any of that anymore. It's either you get it right or you go to the left, right? So the first thing is holding ourselves accountable and being able to say, I messed that relationship up, or whatever the relationship may be. And a lot of times it's definitely when it comes to a man, we have messed relationships up, right? By being too strong-willed, by fighting. When I say fighting, I'm not talking about physical fighting, but I'm saying fighting for the position, because we have so long before we've gotten into relationships have saw where the woman was in the lead. So now you get a man that comes into your life, or your significant other that comes into your life, and they say, no. I know who I am. I know my role. What's your role? This is the position I'm playing. I know who I am as a man. And we get threatened by that because we're trying to make it be comfortable. We're trying to make it comfortable for us because of the way we grew up. No, this is really how it's supposed to be. Now, we may not say it outright, but a lot of times if we sit back and think about situations that we have been in where we had disagreements with our significant other, and they're telling you, no, I'm not going to allow that, or you're going back and forth with them. The real reason why you're going back and forth is the fact that you want it to be comfortable where you can sit in it and you can be okay. I don't know if that makes sense. So for instance, I can use me as an example, where I was never really comfortable. I needed to be in control. Now y'all know we deal with this a lot. I needed to be in control of any type of situation. So if my ex said to me, hey, I got this trip planned. Oh my gosh, anxiety going off over the roof, right? My anxiety. I'm like stressed out. This was years ago. And I would say, oh, okay, you try to play it off. But in your mind, you don't really realize it. I realize it now, but in your mind, you don't really realize that. It's like, okay, he planned a trip. I want to know, when is the trip? What I gotta, what clothes I gotta have for the trip? What I gotta pack? I have my kids. Where is this gonna be at? Is it camping? I don't want to camp. Oh, is it on the beach? I don't feel like the beach. So these are the things that would go on in my head, and then what we would come and say, oh, well, what is it? Right? So in the beginning, it was fine because he'll tell me what it is, and then I'll say, oh, I don't really like that, because I already have in my mind where I want us to go and what I want to do. So in the beginning, it was great it wasn't great, but he didn't pick up on the fact that I was manipulating the situation. And we know how to do that, right? And then they say, okay, you know what? Well, we'll do that, and we'll do this one at another time, right? So that is, whether you realize it or not, those are like how it starts. And then after a while, as we got I was in a relationship for 19 years. So after a while, it was, hey, pack the kids, we're going here. Don't ask me no questions. Now, I know I'm not the only person that's been in that situation, but it's part of that masculinity. You don't need to be masculine, or you don't need to be in control of that. I'm just talking about that particular situation, because of the fact that that man that you married, that you trust, that you said, I trust that he's going to lead my household. And everybody has their own way of doing things. I'm talking about my household at the time and what I was dealing with. That man that I trust, that I lay down with, that I decided to bear children from, I trust him enough to plan a vacation. But a lot of times that's just not what happened. And so whether, a lot of times by the time it gets to the end, now we're pointing out all of the things that the person has done that we were in a relationship with, instead of holding yourself accountable. And I'm very good at that now, right? And I was good at that even afterwards, because I knew it was time for us to separate. But I was always able to say, no. It wasn't one person or one situation that broke down this relationship. It was many things that broke down. And trust me, normally you say, 50% he had that side and I had that side. I think it was more 75 on my side and 25, because where he was trying at, I was still trying to fight for the role like I saw my mother did. And so if we can be accountable and be able to point out and say, you know what? Yeah, that's where that thing started at. I can see now in different relationships, and you can use this as well as even at your job. I have been in jobs, and I've been in jobs where women, some women just can't handle power, where they take the power and they're emotional, and they use their masculinity, their power, right, to get the things that they need done. And if they don't like you, they become bullies. So I know I'm not the only one that has had a boss that was actually a bully. It was that passive aggressive thing that went on, where it was like, oh my gosh, you do your interview and everything is great, and you're like, you know what, it's gonna work out great here. And then after a while, if you start shining, right, or you start doing really well, sometimes, especially when it comes to women, we don't like that. Now, as people, we don't like that. You could do good, but you don't outdo me. So then people start finding problems with you, and the next thing you know, you're going into meetings, you're having meetings over the most pettiest thing. You're like, what? You know what I'm saying? The job is being done correctly and everything, but because that person may not like you because you're sure of yourself, or you're securing yourself, or you do a great job or whatever. A lot of times I'm talking about me, I have been in situations where women of power, women with power, have become very masculine. They're worse than men when it comes to that stuff. You know what I mean? Like I told you, I did a video a few months back where my supervisor complained about me dressing up to come to work. What is that? I'm dressing appropriately, But she had a problem with me dressing up like, why you don't wear jeans and a t-shirt like everybody else? I'm not everybody else. So she didn't like that. So then I was being pulled in every other week with meetings of stupidity, to the point where it insults your intelligence, and you're like, I don't even want to address this. You know what? Just go ahead and just tell me how you feel, because this is really stupid. Needless to say, that person quit, right? So I'm talking about the masculine woman. So I want to tell a real quick story that I saw, and this was another thing that made me want to do this video, right? I have a beautiful friend, and I had beautiful friends even in the past. I'm going to use this person that I know in the past. Very career driven, extremely intelligent woman. She's a doctor. Husband had a great career, beautiful family, 2 kids in a white picket house, right? With the white picket fence. And we connected because I was a hairstylist. I was her hairstylist and everything. And let me tell y'all something. This is one story, but we know plenty of these stories, okay? And so what happened was, they were married for about 15 years at the time. And one day she was like, hey, we had gotten pretty close. She said, hey, I want to come to your house and let's go hang out. We're going to go out or whatever. I was like, yeah, let's go get something to eat or whatever. I said, you know what? I'll just come up your way because I live further back. I'll come up your way and I'll just leave my car there and we can head out. And I got to the house. I met her up at her house, and I got to the house and I came in. I spoke to her husband. I spoke to the kids, and we were walking out. I said, hey, we're walking out. We're in a great mood. And she turns to the husband and she said, and wash this. And next time you put the clothes in there, make sure you don't put the white in there, because the white got, and she just started going on like she was talking to him like he was a kid. And I'm looking like, what the? She called him a few curse words. So I guess they had a disagreement. So I said, hey, I'll meet you outside. No, you fine. You fine. And I stepped back and I looked at that. I was like, whoa. Needless to say, maybe 6 years later, I moved away. Hey, I'm going through a divorce. I've seen her on separate occasions. I've seen her. He just stays quiet. And what happened in that situation was, when I came up to see her, I'm that friend. You may not want me as a friend, but I'm that friend that said, well, what happened? And things had happened, and he just said he couldn't deal with it anymore. So he left, right? Excellent. Kids graduated. He waited till them kids graduated. So we're not dealing with all the child support and all that foolishness, right? Kids graduated, and he said, I'm done, right? He didn't even leave. You know, most women say, oh, he has somebody. No. That man ain't have nobody, because I saw him, and he was like, I just couldn't do it no more. Because she operated in her masculinity, and I understood. She had a prominent role. I don't want to say her role, but she had a prominent role, and she had hundreds of people that were depending on her in her job, in her career. And so she couldn't turn that off and come home and be the wife and she showed no softness about her. No, not in her tone, not in her words. It was just brutal. And I said something to her after that. I was like, listen, you can't talk to a man like that. She was like, and I know, because I had did that. I'm not talking as I'm standing to judge a position where I can judge other women, and I'm just saying this just to make a good video. I'm saying this because I was that woman, and we have to learn from that. A lot of times men want softness. They don't want somebody that can lay on the ground and they can step on, right? Like you're a doormat. But they want a woman that they can be able to rest their head, right? They can come home after they have gone through so many things. And I can say this as a black woman being married to a black man. They go through a lot in society. And then so when they come home, And just men in general, they're going out there, they're competing, they're taking crap, you know, on a lot of these jobs. Sometimes some of the jobs are stressful, right? And they have to make major decisions, money wise, you know, handling companies, P&Ls and different things like that. So when they come home, they don't want another man to fight with. And we've heard that over and over again. And it's like, yeah, it is a man complaining. But I want us to be able to step back and say, am I that woman? You know, am I that woman? Is it too late? Can I come to my husband or can I come to my significant other and say, hey, I know this is something that I deal with and I know that it's breaking down our marriage. Is there any hope for us? You know what I mean? And go and get counseling. I went and got counsel. Yes, I did. I had a lot on my plate. I had a business. I had my parents that were sick. And I had a lot of pressure on me because I had employees and I was losing it. I was burnt out. And it's okay to be wrong and it's okay to seek help. And a lot of us don't want to do it. So we have been in relationships, and I'm not just talking about with a man, I'm talking about with friendships. We have destroyed friendships because we deal in a masculine way where we want to be in control. We want to talk to people any kind of way. We want to have attitude. And even friends have backed away because of that mindset. And that's you just operating clearly only in the masculine. The masculinity, your masculinity, right? Where there is no softness. A lot of us have been through traumas in our life that we don't want to talk about, and it spills over into our relationships with our children, with our significant other, with our jobs. A lot of us are walking around literally suffering, right? And it comes out in this way that is ugly. And so I wanted to bring this out, and I know we're going to have a lot of comments in the comments. Please like and share this video. But I wanted to tap into it just a little bit to say that it is okay. It's not okay to operate in your masculinity. It is better to operate in your softness and your femininity. And I'm going to tell you why. Femininity is where the power lies. When you look in the Bible, and maybe everybody's not into the Bible, and I understand. But when you look into the Bible and you read about your four mothers, and one of the ones I loved was Abigail. See, Abigail was the one that was married to Nabal, and Nabal was a mess. They said he was very cruel, but she knew how to speak, because when David came when David came, because Nabal had said some words and he was coming to handle him. It was Abigail that knew how to speak to the king. You see what I mean? She knew how to speak to the king. So she understood her power was in her femininity. And we could talk about so many others. Sarah, she knew how to speak to Abraham. She didn't want that lady there. Even though she stepped over her bounds and told that man to lay with that woman, Sarah was like, in my femininity, I don't want her here. I feel threatened with her. And she was able to be vulnerable. When you read these stories, they teach us how to be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable. You understand what I'm saying? It's okay even for your significant other to be vulnerable, to come to you, because you have that femininity. You have that softness. You know how to be a nurturer. It is embedded in us to be nurturers, right? And so that is more where the power lies. And in that, you will have great relationships, right? If we learn to walk in humility and humble ourselves and understand that there's more power in that than going into all different kinds of relationships and fighting. I remember I was a hairstylist. I'm still a cosmetologist. Ask a licensed cosmetologist. And I remember I was working in this high-end salon down here in South Florida in Pinecrest. Pinecrest is very upscale, right? It's money, old money there. And the place was in the Falls, the salon. And I had this friend, and she looked like a model, Christine. And she, blonde hair, tall and everything, beautiful girl. And she said to me one day, I was like fussing about something. And she was like, man, every time I see you fussing about something. I was like, what? She said, You don't have to fight anymore. I was upset when she said, I was like, what? She was like, yeah, you don't have to fight anymore. You don't, meaning like, stop being angry. And you don't, and it is, I was insulted at the time, but when I went home, I was embarrassed that she saw that in me, that she was like, listen, we're in this place, we making buku money, we got the best clients, life is good, we dress good, we look good, life is good. What is your problem? That's how a lot of us are living. So I pray that this video helps you guys. I know not everybody's not gonna like what is said, but I wanted to bring these things out because this is part of Ask a Licensed Cosmetologist, where we talk about the issues. We don't just talk about the hair issues. We have to talk about the internal, because that explains why we do the things externally, right? So I pray that this video, that you accept this video. I pray that you like and share and tell your own story and comment on it. I love you guys. I will see you next video.